really does start as parents, right? To understand what we're saying in the house and what we're exuding. And chances are, right, that you as parents have learned a lot of your money mindset from the people that you grew up with.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Teen Talks. Today, we have a very special guest. He is an entrepreneur, a financial coach, and an author who retired early at the age of 36 years old. He's deeply passionate about helping individuals overcome limiting beliefs and achieving financial freedom. His name is Michael Quan, and he is an international best-selling author of the book, The F.I.R.E Planner, which is a step-by-step workbook to reach your full financial potential. He has been featured in media outlets such as Good Morning America, Business Insider, Market Watcher, Yahoo Finance, and MSN. And his most recent venture is Y.E.S, the Youth Entrepreneur Summit, which is a summer business camp for teenagers. Please join me in welcoming Michael Quan.
Yay! We're so excited to have you here, Michael.
Thank
Uh,
you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
and I met Michael last year at GYLS, which we've talked about on the show, and just immediately hit it off. And he's just an amazing guy who's done so many great things and has this big heart for kids, just like we do. So, um, we're so happy that you're here. I know that you have kind of a cool story about how finance became such a big passion for you. Would you mind sharing what happened, how that happened?
Absolutely. Yeah, what's interesting about money is that growing up, we don't typically get any type of instructions or curriculum, especially in our schools. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're left out on our own to figure it out for ourselves. And so for me, I was very fortunate in the sense that I had a couple of uncles who were entrepreneurs and real estate investors. And so what I didn't realize at the time was that they were building assets and they were building passive income. But what I did notice as a young child was that they had tons of free time. And I was like, I want that, right? They were always like, taking us out to go get ice cream, taking us on cool trips. One of my uncles had this big motorhome and we'd trek across the United States from California to Florida. And I was like, this is like the dream life, right?
Yeah.
And so here's the interesting thing. Because I saw this happening, I thought, oh, this is just something that people do, right? And so because of that, I took a very unique path and I didn't follow a traditional 9 to 5 career path. I became an entrepreneur pretty quickly after school, ended up purchasing some real estate, investing in the stock market, and things of that nature. And again, the reason why I share that part of the story is because our beliefs really are the fundamental starting point for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we believe is possible is going to lead to our actions, and then the actions are going to give us our results. And so, again, I was very fortunate in that I had these uncles as role models, and then I was able to build my financial, what's called nest egg, to retire early and just have a life of optionality. And even though I say, I'm retired, I work a lot on lots of different passion projects and really serving and helping other people to find that financial freedom because I think it's such an important tool. Money's an important tool for us to master so that we can really become the best versions of ourselves and I believe then serve other people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I I think it's such a, like you said, it's not taught in schools, which is a shame because it's rather quite complex to understand, what you can do. And, most people think I just have to my time for money, my time for money, my time for money. And, they're missing out on life, right? You know, plug the hours in at work kind of thing and work for someone else. And so I love what you're doing. It's my passion to do the same. And but how do we, I don't know, our audience might be, some of them might be financially very, very well, understand a lot, and some might not. Some might just be, I don't know, I've never really learned. But the thing is, how do we get this next generation, our teens, on this path to understanding money, how to use it, how to make it work for them? Um, whether it be the parent or the teen, how can they maybe even work together to figure this out? What do you suggest?
That's a fabulous question, Susan. And it's a really important one because, especially in our westernized society and even outside of that, right?
Mhm,
Again, financial literacy is not taught in the school
mhm,
system. And so, because of that, the majority of people don't know what to do with their money. And in fact, they do the things that are opposite, counterintuitive. And it's not because of anything that they're just doing so-called being dumb, right? It's because the media and our social aspects of ideas of what money is really create this atmosphere of spending and financing everything.
mhm,
And so, it could be something as simple as going out and financing cars, education, houses. And it's not to say that this is necessarily a bad thing, but the problem becomes when you do that without thinking about the consequences when you take that action,
mhm.
because you can start stacking on these big interest rates. And unfortunately,
Debt.
when you do that, the debt, yeah, when you do that, you get stuck in what's called the rat race, right? You start running on this like treadmill, so to speak, right? And you can't ever get off because you're constantly paying off the debt. And so, what I think the best way to start is to first realize, first and foremost, hey, there's another way to do this. And I talked about it just briefly before. It starts with a mindset. We have to
Mhm,
even believe that that's possible, because if we don't believe it's possible, we're not even going to start.
yeah.
But I believe where the great breaking point for helping us to break out of old habits and thoughts are to realize that other people are doing this. So whether it's me or countless of other people that have figured out how to break out of this rat race, I think that inspiration, knowing that, hey, you know what, Michael was able to do that, I could do that too, right?
Mhm,
That's one new thought that you can have. And then, secondly, as you start to invest in your education, whether it's reading a book, whether it's listening to podcasts, whether it's going out and watching a YouTube video, starting to educate yourself, you're going to start to adopt new beliefs. And once you start adopting new beliefs, you're going to start taking new actions and ultimately getting new results. And so I love what you said, Susan, in the sense that parents and teens, they may, be on the same footing where they can learn this together, because maybe the
mhm.
parent actually hasn't had the financial training, and that's okay. We all are where we are. We all start where we're at, and everyone's different. But I will tell you that, especially in the westernized society, a lot of us are trying to scramble out of this rat race. And so I think a great place to start is to really look at other people that have achieved the outcome that you want, and then model them, because why recreate
Yeah.
the wheel, so to speak, if you can find someone that's already done it and then model them. That's one of the fastest pathways to finding success.
Mhm, for sure.
And I have a question for you, Michael. You obviously, like, in your journey and your story, you were able to learn about financial literacy through different stages, I presume. What were the different moments where you learned about, like, yeah, you have to have the right belief system, the right mindset when it comes to money? And then what were like the little learnings that you learned throughout your career? Did it come from you just experiencing things in life, or did it come from people teaching you, you seeking out that information? How did all of that come about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rehan. So what happened for me was, as I mentioned earlier, with my uncles, and I just
Mhm,
noticed, and I was very young at the time, but I just noticed that they had the freedom, and I knew that I wanted that, right? But that
mhm,
doesn't tell me how to go about getting that. So
Right.
what I did do was I started to educate myself. I started to read books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a great book by Robert Kiyosaki.
Mhm,
And one of the great things about that book is it doesn't necessarily tell you how to do it, but it really helps to give you the right mindset. So back to that mindset piece of really understanding, hey, there's a different way to do this. Once I realized that, okay, this is probably what my uncles had done. They had figured out how to use businesses and real estate to leverage assets and create passive income. I'm like, how do I do that? And so I started picking up books about real estate investing. I started picking up books about entrepreneurship. I started trying different things. I started buying stocks in the stock market. And I started with like $5. There wasn't a lot. And I would just put $5 in every week. This is just outside of college or so. I think that's when I started first investing. And it just slowly started growing. And then as my income started growing, I started adding more. Then it was $10 a week. And then it was 20. And the nice thing is that even though like it was just $5 in the beginning, it's that first step. It's that first action piece that is the hardest, right? And so if
Mhm.
you can get yourself to take that first action, then the subsequent ones become easier and easier because you're riding momentum. And so I think the real trick, right, Han, is to really start to take some sort of action, whether it's educating yourself, whether it's taking some of that education and applying it, and then not being afraid of messing up, right? You're going to mess up
Mm,
inevitably in life, and stumble here and there. But if you take the perspective that, hey, this is just part of the journey, this is part of learning,
yeah.
then you can't really fail, right? And it's just failing forward. So I think
Mhm.
that's the real key is to start taking action, start modeling other people, and then just keep that ball rolling. And the cool thing, the best thing about this is that once you start taking these actions, you can build a critical mass in what we call in the FIRE space. FIRE, just a side note, FIRE stands for financial independence, retire early. Once you start to build a critical mass of assets, all of a sudden your passive income, once it exceeds your expenses, then all of a sudden you don't have to work for money anymore, right? Your
Mhm.
money's working for you and
Yeah.
you no longer have to work for that money. And then you can choose to, you can still earn money, but then you get to do what your heart desires and not be beholden to money because you have to.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it all starts with that first step, like you said. And it's funny because I feel like when it comes to money, many people have a hard time taking that first step because of like their mindset of scarcity when it comes to money, right? And they have that fear of like, putting in that extra $10 into an investment that might work, might not work, or whatever it is. So it's interesting, and I completely resonate with you when you say it's that first step that's the hardest step, but then once you make it, everything that follows is a lot easier.
And I think too, and I resonate with this is what parents say about money out loud in the home, it it changes the mindset. So like if you're growing up and people are and your parents are saying money doesn't grow on trees, um, I can't afford that, we can't afford that, I know you really want it, but we don't have enough money. Those kind of comments, which I grew up with a lot. Um, and I've said it when I didn't know and I didn't have a good mindset about money. I said it around my children. And so that creates that whole, oh, I don't deserve it. I can't do this. Money's the root of all evil. All these things really, really damage the mindset of your kids when you say these kinds of things. And so
Yeah,
you have to
that's
go back and look at what is my mindset that I am saying in my home that my kids are now latching on. I think I need to figure this out.
Yeah, you're so right, Susan. It really does start as parents, right? To understand what we're saying in the house and what we're exuding. And chances are, right, that you as parents have learned a lot of your money mindset from the people that you grew up with, whether it
Exactly.
was your parents, whether you were lucky like me and had some uncles or close friends, right? You're observing, you're seeing how transactions are happening, you're understanding what the language is that's coming, you're seeing the physiology of people that get very tense with money, or maybe they get negative emotions, and sometimes people can adopt those. And so, again, the key, I think, piece of this conversation is really understanding, okay, where am I with my money mindset, right?
Mm,
Hmm.
And how can I evolve that to the next level so that I can, create a better situation for my own family, and then give my child a way to, build theirs consciously instead of unconsciously. I think that's the piece. If we know that this is true, then how do we then help our teens to consciously create a money mindset that's empowering, that's, I think, thinking along the lines of abundance versus um, trying to pull back, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to really these feelings that are deep seated, and how can we create an environment where people are ultimately positive about money? Because if you're positive about money, you're going to be able to go out and do things that other people aren't able to do when you're just trying to like hang on for dear life, so to speak.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I think the whole thing of you just give, get, and don't want to give out. which also is a scarcity thing. It's like, no, I can't give to other things because I don't have enough money. I got to have more, or, that kind of thing. I just read a book by Ken Honda, Happy Money. Really great book about mindset. So I suggest that one if you're working on your mindset with money. That's a great book. So how do, let's say we're getting our mindset right, and now we've got a teenager, our tween, a teen or a tween, and you want to start the concept and of teaching them. How would you start? Like, maybe they got their first job, or whatever. What are you going to teach them? How would you start?
Yeah, fantastic question. I think for teens, I think the best way to approach it is to just really start asking them questions, seeing what interests them. What are your ideas about money? Why don't you start there and see what their ideas of money are? And you'll
Mhm.
figure out really quickly, okay, do they have a positive idea of money? Do they have a negative idea? Do they like it? And then if they like it, what do you like about it? Right? Some people get enamored by the idea of what they see in social media and all the cars and things
Yeah.
of that nature. And
Teenagers
even though, yeah,
specifically.
teenagers, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
wanted the Lamborghini and the yacht
Yes.
when I was a teen,
Yeah.
right? And and that's okay. I think it's good to, when you find these, like, the teens and the tweens and they're getting excited about some of these things, start peeling back the layers. Okay, that's cool. Tell me why. Why do you like that? What is it? What would it give you, right? And a lot of times you're going to see that it gives them a sense of significance. It's going to give
Mm.
them a sense of certainty, a sense of freedom, right? And to really explore these ideas and feelings. And if you're able to do that, they become more and more interested. Okay, well, how would you go about doing that? What would you
Mhm.
do to create this money, right? And they are inevitably going to come up with an answer. Maybe it's not the best answer, but it's going to
I
be an
want to be an
answer and it's
influencer,
exactly, yeah.
which
And
is not as
they may
easy to
be
do as
become
they
an
think.
influencer. Yeah, yeah. And interestingly enough, I mean, that's a viable pathway for
Sure.
people now to create income, right? It's no different than when I was, younger. Like, people were like, "I'm going to become a professional computer, player," I mean, we just laugh at them, right? And there's like full-on leagues, right? That,
Yeah.
I mean, Rayhan, I know you're in the professional sports arena, right? And there's full-on like professional esports, right?
Yeah.
As well. And anyways, side note, the point is that we want to start the conversation where we're exciting them, getting them interested in the conversation of money. And then I think it's really helping them to guide them and say, okay, well, if you're interested in that, here's a book. Here's a YouTube influencer that talks specifically about how to create this type of company. Here's a summer camp. As you mentioned earlier, I am starting up a youth entrepreneurship summit this year with my friend Alan, and we're basically bringing teens in to teach them about entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And the way that we're going to do it is through immersion learning through 4 days. And even though they're going to be learning a lot of, practical things, we're going to really make it fun. So again, parents, I think the key with teens, and even when I was a teen, right? I'm fully fine learning as long as I'm having fun. But if
Yeah.
I'm not having fun and I feel like it's just like, sticking, reading a book and taking notes, I'm not going to do that, right? So you really have to understand the motivation of our kids and our teens. And if we can align that with them and even align it with our own goals of learning about personal finance as well, then I think you get a win-win situation and you can almost play off of each other and just deepen a relationship together.
Hmm.
Even on the financial aspect of things, which
Right.
is
Okay.
unique these days. But I think it'd be cool.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Why don't
oh,
you tell us more about that, about the summit? Because you mentioned it, obviously. Like, when is it gonna be and all that stuff? I mean, we'll talk about it at the end too, but you want to just give people a quick idea of when it's gonna be and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Youth Entrepreneurship Summit is going to be held in Vancouver, British Columbia, and we're going to be hosting that in August 6th to 9th, and it's going
Hmm.
to be at a school site, Windermere Secondary School. And so again, we're going to be bringing teens. They're going to have an opportunity to learn how to create a business plan, figure out how to solve a problem and create
Hmm.
value, and then ultimately how to pitch that idea. So, in addition to learning entrepreneurship, they're also going to be learning leadership and communication skills. I think that's a really important piece, regardless of to become an entrepreneur or not.
right.
These skills are transferable to any career path or any type of profession they choose to ultimately, seek. And so
Hmm.
that's what we really want as an outcome, is to give them some of these tools, get them to play in this environment. And then at the end, when we do the pitch, if there's a really great idea, we're going to have a panel of entrepreneurs that can actually fund them in a Shark Tank like environment.
Oh, cool. That's so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Awesome.
So getting back to money, I kind of think of, what would you tell, so like, let's say the parent is starting the conversation now and the mindset's getting there, and they get their first job. If it was like my son, his first job was at Starbucks as a barista, right? You got a little bit of money coming in. What would you tell them as a parent? What would you say they should do with their child to say, okay, you've got money coming in. What are you going to do with that? Are you just going to spend it, or what should we do? What would you suggest? How would they go about doing that?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, I would congratulate them for going out and getting a job and bringing in some income. And I'd say,
Yeah.
this is fantastic. You're taking responsibility, you're taking action, and now you're earning income. And this is a great opportunity for you to take this income and decide what you're going to do with it. And so, one of the first things that they may want to do is to really sit down with them and say, okay, well, we can create a budget, or we could create a spending plan. And I like the word spending plan
I
instead of
like that
budget
better
because
too. The word budget's like, ooh.
yeah, yeah, it's more fun to spend money than it is to cut money. So I like to say, create a CSP, a conscious spending plan. So
Hmm.
when you're bringing in the money, you understand, okay, well, what am I going to do with that money? Well, I want to spend some on some fun things with my friends. I want to maybe put some away for college. I may want to contribute to some of the family expenses, whatever it may be, right? And really work with the team to understand what their goals are, right? It's not going to be like they're a full on blown adult, but just to start exercising the idea. Maybe it's investing into some stocks, maybe it's investing into their education, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Having a very conscious spending plan and putting it on paper, or electronically, if you want to, is a great way to go out and just get conscious about what's happening with the money when it comes in and where it goes when it goes out. And so whether you set them up, if they have some sort of obviously incoming income, they're going to have either a checking account or a savings account for it to be deposited to, likely. And so making sure that they have access to that,
Hmm.
and being able to log in and just being able to observe, okay, here's the money that's coming in and here's the money that's going out, and really understanding the dynamic of cash flow. I
Hmm.
think that's something that, even parents sometimes don't even realize and understand that at this point in time, because they just kind of turn their heads and they don't want to look at it, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, it's very interesting. As humans, we're very, very adaptable. And if we see things coming in and out, then you can almost kind of surf in that space. And at the same time, again, if you're conscious and you put a certain amount aside here and here and here, then you can, I believe, get a nice balance and achieve multiple goals versus just kind of, spending and not really looking, so to speak.
Mm,
I love how you said, so it's basically the, mindset, then a
Mhm.
spending plan. I love that. A spending plan. That sounds so good. And to be conscious, if you're conscious and aware, which we always talk about in all of our things, awareness is key, and not to be blind and go, I don't want to deal with this, but be conscious and be excited about it. Figure out your goals. Right. So those three things are so important. And I love the way you said that, because that it sounds simple, it sounds fun,
Mhm.
you know?
yeah.
Um,
It makes me think of the ABC formula that we've talked about before,
mhm,
where like A, you have the awareness, B, you have the belief system, and then C, you take control. So that's like taking the action, right?
mhm,
Um, I love mindset. I think that mindset is the most important thing in life for human beings to be able to tap into that power that we have in our minds. And I do kind of want to go back to that a little bit, because the idea of having an abundant mindset when it comes to money has come up quite a bit. And I have a question for you, Michael, from your understanding, because I've done, like, for example, Money EQ by Ken Honda on Mind Valley. And, this idea has come up quite a bit, and I was able to learn quite a bit from it. But how can someone, whether it's a parent or a teenager, how can someone start developing that abundant mindset? Is there a way to actually do it? Are there steps to take? Are there ideas or principles to understand? Like, how does
Hmm.
someone go about that?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, Rayhan, because what's fascinating, parents that are listening right now, your teens, if you have the ability to listen to this podcast right now, that means that you have a certain level of electronics, right? And access to technology. And so the reason why that's important is because we're pretty wealthy as is, regardless of what your financial situation is. We live in a time that's been never, I'd say, easier to build wealth. But even we do have just, if you're listening in the United States, maybe it's another country as well. If you're listening to this, there's a good likelihood that you're living above, the majority of people financially than the rest of the world, right? And so the reason why I bring that up is because it really starts with understanding to be grateful for what we do have.
Mhm.
Because when we get into that mindset of gratitude, all of a sudden you start to adopt an abundance mindset naturally. Because you're like, oh wow, like some of the people live on like $2 or $3 US, right, a day, right? And you're like, oh man, I just spent like $6 on my coffee, right?
Right.
um and it's all relative, right? And sometimes it can be tempting to compare ourselves to social media and other people within our sphere, but the challenge with that is that it doesn't help us move forward. It puts us back in that scarcity mindset. But when we really start to silence, I think, our minds and our hearts and really kind of center ourselves and you know what, I live in a pretty abundant life. I might have a car. I might have access to AC. That's one of my favorite things I always go back to when I want to feel like very grateful is I have access to air conditioning, right? And if you think about 100 years ago, right? Kings and queens didn't have this. Pharaohs didn't have AC. I mean, they might have someone fanning them, but it wasn't like cold air. It was just like plain air. so, so the point being is that when we start with gratitude, it naturally allows us to have an abundant mindset. And
Hmm.
when we have the abundance mindset and we're looking about how we can create value for other people, then all of a sudden, whatever you're going to be doing as an investor or as someone that's going out finding a job or trying to earn money in some form or sense, if you kind of embody that understanding that, hey, I'm trying to create value in an abundant way, and then things are going to come back to me, I think that's the key, right, Han? And I
Mhm.
know it's a little bit woo woo in the sense that, like, it's not necessarily tangible, but it works, and it's worked for years. It worked for decades, and sometimes some people, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, whatever you believe, right? It's
Hmm.
really a function of, I believe that there's this law of just like, if you're kind of giving out, right, you're going to get this back in. And so if you're able to do that and get into the abundant mindset versus scarcity, you're going to be tight. You're not going to want to give. You're going to be like trying to, figure out where the next dollars are coming from. And I think that's the opposite of what we want to do. So I think that's the long way of answering your question. How do you get into abundance mindset? You really start with gratitude first.
Yeah.
Mm. I love
100%.
that. I love that. It's so many, there's so many parallels that you can draw just to life in general as well with
Hmm.
what you just said, right? About, yeah, living a fulfilled life and living a passionate life. It all starts there as well. It starts with that gratitude, right? Um, love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm. Wow. So we're kind of winding up. Before we ask the last question, where could people reach to find you? Um, you've written a book. Highly recommend you get this book. I just finished it. It's fantastic. You work your way through everything, and it's so valuable. So if you want to learn, I'd start here. I'd start here. Fire by Michael Quan.
We'll
Um,
have all the links in the
we
description and
definitely will.
in the show
Yes.
notes. So
Where
yeah.
else can
Yeah,
they
I
find you if they want to follow you or learn more?
Sure. I appreciate that. And really quickly, a quick note about the book is I wrote it for people that know nothing about money because I wanted to start from the ground up for people that just need to adopt the new beliefs that it's possible.
Yeah.
And in there, aside from my story, I actually showcase several other people and their paths to financial independence and their paths to financial freedom,
Mm-hmm.
because there's lots of different ways to do it. So you can kind of pick and choose what resonates with you. And I give you a very clear pathway to get there. And so, again, why reinvent the wheel when you can model someone else? And I did the same, right? I had my uncles, I modeled them, and I was able to, stand on their shoulders, right? I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
necessarily what to do myself, but when you find a great model them, and you can get the same result. Secondly, you can find me on my blog. It's financiallyalert.com, and I talk about mindset, strategies, and financial independence. And if you'd like for your team to come join us at the Youth Entrepreneurship Summit, you can go to www.youthentsummit.com. And so
Okay.
we're taking new students currently, as well as we actually have a couple of scholarship and needs-based grants as well. So if you're interested in that, there's a link on the site as well if you'd like to apply for that, where we'll subsidize the costs of the summer camp.
Okay.
So we definitely love to have your team. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we'll put that link in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Um,
Everything.
yeah. So anything else as
The
far
final thing I
as
just want to say is, like, Susan and Rayhan, I really appreciate what you guys are doing to really help parents, because as a parent myself, I've got a 12-year-old and 10-year-old, and they're going to be tweens pretty soon. Right? Actually, the 12-year-old is like already acting like a teen, so I'm getting some glimpses. But I would really commend you for having these conversations, because it's something that I don't think there's a lot of, and it can be
Mm,
very easy to get lost in society's pressures, let's just say,
yeah,
right? And what we think society tells us to do. And I don't think a lot of times that's the right thing to do, right?
exactly.
And so
Yeah.
having a very conscious conversation um, on Teen Talks is phenomenal, and really understanding, from Rayhan's perspective and then from yours, Susan. It's great to have that dynamic. So keep going and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, we are. And we're
Appreciate it.
also going to be putting together a video with Michael, where he's going to actually work with Rayhan as far as just for video for teens to understand where to start and understand money. So look for that, because that'll be coming soon. So last question for you, Michael. If you could share one lesson from your life experience that would be of value to our listeners, what would that be?
One of the biggest messages I want to share with people is that, because I talk a lot about money, I want you to understand that money is a tool. It's a means to an end. And so use it as a tool, learn how to use it as a tool, learn how to master it as a tool, but realize that money doesn't define who you are, right? At
Mm.
the end of the day, you have resources, you have your spirit, you have your essence of who you are. And so really treasure that, because that's where your true wealth is. Money is a tool to expand more of that and share more of that with the world. And so I would say use money to do more of that, to ultimately the essence of who you are.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love it. Yay. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And you took
Thank
your
you so much.
time
It's
and
been so fun.
yeah. All right. Well, you know where to find Michael. And until next time, next week, like, subscribe, follow, share. Please get this message out into the world. So you need to share it with other people. Yeah, all those whatever they are. Oh, and wait, you have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. You can find it on Financial Alert, but if you'd like to go directly, it's called Breakthrough Millionaire. And yeah, we talk about mindset specifically to money, and some other personal development topics that we
Okay. We'll have
randomly
link to
talk
that as well.
about.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Okay. Bye.
Peace.